Probably the most important troubadour poet to come out of the 12th century was Arnaut Daniel, who to this day has a significant reputation, primarily because he's had some very high-profile boosters in the last several centuries. He is a complicated poet. He is a bit of a smartass. We don't know that much about him. He lived and wrote sometime in the waning years of the 12th century and maybe a little in the beginning of the 13th. He was he had a reputation of being a little bit of a prankster, a little bit of a joker, very much a bit of a show-off, perhaps, and the reputation of generally liking to outwit everybody and thinking he could, which maybe he could. He was a he was the high point, if you will, if there is one, I guess, in the troubadour tradition. And he, in fact, invented a very complicated rhyme scheme for his work, known as the sestina, which we'll get into in a minute. But it is a very, very complex, very difficult, excruciatingly difficult form that he liked to work in. And you get a sense of he was working in this very abstract form as a way of pointing out the difficulty of it, for good and for ill, both showing that, well, yeah, this is all just kind of silly, it's a bit of a game, I'm not really taking it seriously, but on the other hand, it's very serious because it is so difficult and it shows so much effort that you're left in a little bit of a limbo as to how to approach it, how to interpret it. How sincere should we take this person at any one point or another? And these are all questions that come from the poems and leave a lingering sensation of, okay, it's not just this, perhaps. There's something else there. It's more than meets the eye, so to speak, which of course leads into how many different interpretations of medieval art. The most famous work that we have from him, we don't have a lot, but we have some, is one that is sometimes titled The Art of Love. It is a remarkably interesting little poem that does appear in the sestina form, and you can see the complexity of this in the rhymes. Look at these stanzas. The first stanza ends. Look at just the last word of each stanza, the last sound of each stanza, or each line within the first stanza. Eri oli ima aura mu overna. The next stanza. Eri oli ima aura plus Iverna. The next stanza. Eri ali ima aura nu erna. It holds. This rhyme scheme matches stanza by stanza. Each line ends or matches the beginning line or the line of the next stanza and in its place within that stanza. It's a remarkable pattern. It's remarkably complex, and you're not sure exactly how to take this because it is so complex. The sestina is so rigorous that you wonder how he could compose within this. Each line is 10 syllables long, except for the first line of each stanza, which is 7 syllables. There are 6 stanzas, hence sestina, 6 stanzas in the form, followed by a 3-line coda, or envoy as it's called, which comments and breaks out of the pattern and offers a little bit of a comment or a perspective on the work that goes beforehand. It's a remarkably complicated form that Daniel is just dallying with, perhaps. you're not sure how seriously to take it. You're not sure what to make of this. It is a remarkably difficult work. Why is he doing this? Is he doing this to show off, just to show, hey, I can do this, so I will? You can't, I can. Or is he doing this for another aesthetic reason? Is he doing this to perhaps point out the complex nature of life and art in the Middle Ages? These notions are unanswerable, but remarkably significant, I would say, in trying to deal with the poems. The most common translation of The Art of Love comes to us from Paul Blackburn. There have been a few others that have really taken off. A really good one is Frederick Golden. And it's a very it struggles to be a very clear translation, but of course the language is very it is a very archaic form of French. It's Provençal, it's Occitan. It's difficult to get into a modern idiom, especially when you're trying to, even hint at the elaborate, painstaking patterning, which really no translation can do. So it's it's always sort of a hit and miss with a translation. But the Frederick Golden is pretty good. To this sweet and pretty air I set words that I plane and finish, and every word fit well, once I have passed the file there. For at once love polishes and orates my song, which proceeds from her, ruler and guardian of merit. I'm not sure what's going on here. Well, I'm looking at plane and finish. A plane, not like a flying plane, but like a carpenter's tool, like something that you would use to level. And so here you get this this notion of art as an artifact, a poem as a work of carpentry. It's dwelling on the artifactual plasticity, if you will, of art. And so he is putting himself in the role of a craftsman, of a carpenter, if you will. He has passed the file there. He's filed it down. It's something he's worked on, which makes sense. Within a sestina form, it's very intricate, so it requires a kind of fine-tuning, a real smoothing over of the edges, of fitting things together very, very snugly, which is what a carpenter does, and it's what somebody working in a very difficult rhyme scheme has to do. At once love polishes and orates my song, which proceeds from her, ruler and guardian of merit. So here, love, in the personified form of love, is a kind of an abstract goddess figure. For at once love polishes and orates my song. Love, in fact, as a divine figure, imbues the art. Where's he going with this? Each day I am a better man and purer, for I serve the noblest lady in the world, and I worship her. I tell you this in the open. I belong to her from my foot to the top of my head, and let the cold wind blow. Love reigning in my heart keeps me warm when it winters most. And here you get a fairly conventional, for the medieval age, notion of love as ennobling. Love makes me better. The experience of love, let's say, becomes a proxy in many constructions leading from the Art of Courtly Love. The experience of love ennobles and serves as a proxy for the experience of the divine. An experience of love is like an experience of God. And so it improves you. So here you've got a notion of, okay, without it, I'm just kind of a lowly, animalistic figure. But love lifts me up. Love ennobles me. Love evolves me. if you will. But also notice the number of first-person pronouns here. Each day I am a better man and purer, for I serve the noblest lady in the world, and I worship her. I tell you this in the open. I belong to her from my foot to the top of my head. And let the cold wind blow, love reigning in my heart keeps me warm when it winters most. The focus is pretty clear. He is focused very much on himself. Now, he credits that, this is in relation to his great lady love, who is the semi-divine figure here. Love is divine, and now he has picked out the woman he loves, and he sees her as like a conduit to the experience of love. All very medieval, all very courtly, but it's very focused on him. Each day I am a better man and purer. Well, beginnings and endings. What's the function of worship here? Is it to focus on the divine, on the object, or is it about the subject? Is it about me and what happens to me in the act of worshiping as a result of feeling that divine connection, or of straining to feel that divine connection? And he takes that notion of divinity and worship and develops it. I hear 1,000 masses and pray and pay to have them said. I burn lights of wax and oil, so may God give me good luck with her, for no defense against her does me any good. When I look at her golden hair, her soft young spirited body, if someone gave me Lucerna, I'd still love her more. Here you get some language of religion coming in. The notion of the mass. He hears 1,000 masses and he pays to have them said. Little hint: he's got some money behind him. Obviously, this is probably why he knows how to read and write. But that sense of worship. And bringing in a specifically liturgical sense of it, specifically Catholic sense of it, quite frankly. I burn lights of wax and oil. Interesting little detail. Yeah, okay. In Catholic religious practices, the burning of candles is very significant, as it is in many other traditions as well. But a curious little image there that he can dwell on. There are any number of Catholic practices that he could include there. Why pick that one? Well, what else can you do with a candle? Well, you can stay up a little bit later writing. So the writing of the poetry, almost conceivably, is like an act of worship. So may God give me good luck with her. So yeah, it's sort of, yeah, well, okay, I'm doing it for God, but also, there's a purpose. Get me the girl. Good luck with her, for no defense against her does me any good. Defense against her. Again, a sense of weakness on his part. He is subject to being overwhelmed by the power of this one woman, but also more the woman, or the emotion, the divine power behind her. Because we really don't know that much about her as a woman. We're not really given much detail of her character. We just know that she is a kind of front for divine power. When I look at her golden hair, her soft young spirited body, if someone gave me Lucerna, which is a city, I'd still love her more. He's scoffing at the notion of, well, if someone gave me Lucerna, let me rule this nice city. That would not be worth anything to me, because he is so enthralled to the divine. So he's scorning worldly riches, worldly distinctions, worldly pleasures for this experience of the divine. But at the same time, that declaration is coming after a curiously physical characterization golden hair, and her soft, young, spirited body. Here we're getting some real like sexual connotations here. Now, golden hair is itself a little bit of a problem in terms of translation. The original line, I believe, is Crin Sar, which is Crin is comes to us through modern French as almost like a kind of our coarse hair, like honestly a horse's mane, something kind of rough and wild. And Sar can be translated as a kind of golden and a kind of blondish, in which case you can see this as maybe a familiar trope. Hair color is a familiar trope throughout the Middle Ages, and the blonde woman is considered generally the more pure, the more angelic. It is very light-haired. The hair can somehow sometimes resemble a halo in that way. But another translation of it can go in a kind of golden auburn way. I think Blackburn translates it as auburn, meaning red. Red hair is something very different in the symbolic association of medievalism, and red hair is a little bit edgier. A redhead in the medieval age is generally thought to be associated somehow with perhaps Satan. Redheads are generally considered to be somewhat suspect, perhaps quite lascivious and sexual. But it's a very different concept than the golden hair, the angelic halo head. So you're not sure exactly how to take that. But, soft, young, spirited body, it's moving in a certain direction there, that poem. I love her and seek her out with a heart so full, I think I am stealing her out of my own hands by too much wanting. If a man can lose a thing by loving it well, for the heart of her submerges mine and does not abate, so usurious is her demand, she gets craftsman and workshop together. A lot of symbols jostling around in this, and honestly, I'm not sure what's going on. I love her and seek her art with a heart so full, it's bursting. His heart is bursting. I think I am stealing her out of my own hands for too much wanting. He's afraid he's going to lose her because he's coveting her so much, which, it can go a lot of different ways in terms of, is he coveting her sexually? Is he coveting her just to possess her? You can take a walk through the Beatitudes and find some biblical warning signs here. But this is a complicated image, very much like all the other complicated images that Arnaut Daniel is just sort of throwing off. Arnaut Daniel is just sort of tossing off as if to say, yeah, make something of this, and here's a puzzle for you. I know what it means, perhaps, but let's see if you can figure it out. Which, is again him sort of playing the smartest guy in the room. For her heart submerges mine and does not abate. Her heart is drowning his. It is suffocating his, if you will. Which is, again, this portrait of the all-powerful female, through an image of divine love, killing, physically torturing and killing, perhaps, the poet, the narrator, the subject of this poem. It's again a sense of being overwhelmed by love, by divinity. But remember also the whole puzzling of it, where love is both the love of the woman and the love of God, where it's the power of love that ennobles, but at the same time threatens. And this is all tied up also with writing. So the power of the love of writing, perhaps, is suffocating and killing him. So now you can see him really, maybe he's not having such an easy time making this rhyme scheme and dealing with all these images. Maybe he's really having to work for it. Maybe he's really struggling and suffering for it. It's all tied up together. And the poem provides no answers. But also at the end, you get, so usurious is her demand, she gets craftsman and workshop together. Now, this is another one that gets translated very variously. Let me see. Blackburn does it by owning tavern and bartender, which is again sort of a different one, maybe a little bit more lascivious, perhaps. Who hangs out in bars? Well, I know. But this sense of someone who works, a common person within the establishment that their action defines. And perhaps he is seeing himself in this construction, where he is the poet working within a tradition of poetry, within a concept of art that is both defined by his product as a craftsman, but also has standards to which he needs to meet. There's this complicated relationship that is just not clear where he's going with this. But again, we're coming back to, in this translation, that notion of craftsman, that notion of him working within, trying to fit things together in a carpenterial mode, if you will. I do not want the empire of Rome. Do not make me pope of it, so that I could not turn back to her, for whom the heart in me burns and breaks apart. If she does not cure me of this torment with a kiss before New Year's, she murders me and sends herself to hell. Wow. The Empire of Rome, in the 12th century, that had some real estate to it. It was under a little bit more attack here and there. France was certainly rising, but you get another instance of him spurning worldly honors, worldly goods, and saying none of that's worth anything if I can't have her. He doesn't want to be Pope because he cannot pursue her, even though popes at the time, well, they very frequently had, a little side piece, so to speak. But you can see more like darkness and desperation creeping in at this point also. If she does not cure me of this torment with a kiss before New Year's, she murders me and sends herself to hell, which is violent. Murders me. You get another instance of, the female, the image of love, is somehow torturing and killing him, here quite physically and literally. But also, it has consequences for her as well, where the God necessarily, the divine presence behind the figure, can't necessarily go to hell. Could she? I don't know. But you can see that complicated relationship between the image that he is building up around this woman, who maybe he's imbuing with the divine apparatus, or maybe he's just, getting frustrated with that and saying, maybe she's not so divine. Maybe, she's killing me and she's going to send herself to hell, because then that would mean that she's actually not the divine spirit. But then what is all this worth if I'm not somehow worshiping God through the act of love? But this torment I endure could not make me turn away from loving well, though it holds me fast in loneliness. For in this desert I cast my words in rhyme. I labor in loving more than a man who works the earth. For the Lord of Moncleve did not love, now Derna and Eggsworth more. We'll get to that last part. But again, you get this sense at the beginning, despite all of his frustration, which is clearly boiling over in the end of that previous stanza. Now in the last of the 6, he says, but I'll take it. This torment I'll endure. Endurance is a very big thing in the European Middle Ages. The idea that this life is meant to be suffering, this life is meant to be an illusion, this life is meant to be torment. And through that, you earn your keys to the divine kingdom, so to speak. You earn your passage to the next life, which is heaven. So again, more complicated notion of love and God and all of these things swimming around in his head. Could not make me turn away from loving well. Again, that focus on the idea of loving properly, loving well. The sense of the worship itself is a very specific act. The writing itself is a very specific act of how he does his work, be it worshiping, building, or writing. Loving. Loving well. Think of, again, the rules of how to love. Though it holds me fast in loneliness or suffering or feeling vulnerable, for in this desert, all alone in the wilderness, loneliness, vulnerable, I cast my words in rhyme. Again, that note of reminding everyone that, yes, I am writing. Now, again, this is a very elaborate form, and he's continually, it seems, continually spaced out, emphasizing the act of writing. So he's calling attention to the fact that he is writing while he is writing in a very complicated form that in fact calls attention to itself by its very complexity. I labor in loving more than any man who works the earth. A little bit of a brag there, saying that, any man who works the earth is, a farmer. But that's kind of a grind. It's also the, if you cast back to Genesis, it's also the supposed order of God to Adam's, like, from now on you're going to have to work the earth. You're going to have to draw your sustenance from the earth. You're going to have to be a farmer. And now he is saying that, that noble profession, yes, okay, it's noble, but my labor in loving, which we already know is loving a woman, worshiping God, and writing poetry, my labor is more than the ordinary, more than even the God-ordained. For the Lord of Moncley did not love, nor Dearna an egg's worth more. Now, scholars have looked for evidence of the Lord of Moncley, nor his love, nor Dania. Nobody has any idea. Maybe this is, just somebody he knew. Maybe this is somebody he heard a story about, whispers around the courtyard or whatever. But here it almost seems like he could be making something up. Maybe he's writing it to his little coterie, you don't know, but maybe he is writing it to posterity who would have no idea who these people are or if they even existed. And just think about this. This is the last note that he is striking of the 6 stanzas of the sestina. And here he's throwing off another little image that, after throwing off lots of them that are puzzles, that are mysteries, that are so uncertain, here he's tossing one off that is just unknowable, perhaps. It's almost like, yeah, sure, do your best with this one. See what you get out of this. It's sort of spiteful, it's sort of playful, it's sort of teasing, it's very arrogant. And it just sort of lands there, and you have no idea what to make of it. But does it mean anything? by including lines that at the very end, beginnings and endings always matter, by including lines at the very end that don't really mean anything, that could be just a commentary or a spoof of other poetry that you've heard that also don't really mean anything. Is he kind of mocking the whole idea? Because at this point we're in, we're baked in, we're reading the poem, we're getting it. Maybe we're listening to the poem. A lot of these original ones probably had music, and now at the very end he's saying, yeah, but it's all crap. I'm making it up. It's nothing. Whispers in the wind. Nothing. You don't know how to take it. You're uncertain. You're sort of battered around, which is, of course, the experience of love, the uncertainty of it, you know? It holds me fast in loneliness, for in this desert I cast my words in rhyme. Just like he's writing, we're interpreting, and we're all trying to figure out in a world that doesn't make sense to us and where we really have no solid answers about anything. He's taken the reader and moved them from a place of just sort of lounging around and, yeah, okay, tell me a story about love or poetry or something like that. Yeah, entertain me, sing me a song. But now he's taken the reader from that comfortable position and moved him into a place of, I'm lost. I'm vulnerable. I don't know what I'm doing. And then he comes with the envoy. This is probably the most famous lines he's known for. I am Arnaut, who hoards the wind and chases the hare on an ox and swims against the tide. Which is a mic drop moment, which is him just going and declaring that you have no idea what I'm talking about. It's a show-off moment. It's a showboat moment. I am Arnaut. Just imagine that attitude. Who hoards the wind. You're a god? What is that? And chases the hare with the ox. I don't know what that means. Maybe there's associations in medieval poetry or literature or legend or something like that about hares and oxes. Certainly, there are animal stories going back how many centuries, but it's a sense of passion and physical engagement and being out in the wild, but in a aggressive mode. He is doing the chasing. He's not being chased. He's not vulnerable here. And swims against the tide. If poetry is supposed to be communication, by swimming against the tide, maybe he is saying, I don't need to communicate. I can do whatever I want. I can thumb my nose at all of you. I don't have to be understood. I don't have to be entertaining. I don't have to be lovable. I don't know what it means. If you do, good for you. But it gives you a sense of the complex nature of the poetry, the bizarre nature of the art that keeps you in a great sense of uncertainty as to what to make of it. And here I would say you're very much in line with most medieval art concepts, theories, where the art is very artificial. It points out its own artificiality. You don't get particularly realistic representations of anybody. Look at some of the great images that we have from this era. It comes on tapestries, and look at tapestries depicting courtly life, and the people, they don't look particularly normal. They don't look particularly human. They look like poorly drawn figures, the kind that maybe somebody in middle school could sketch out. The bodies, and this isn't because they couldn't draw well, it's because they didn't want to make it representational. They wanted it to be representational rather, but they didn't want to make it seem lifelike. They don't want to focus on the thing, because the art is different than the thing. The art is fake. And it's through the art that we have to interpret what is real. Because what is real is God, quite frankly, is the sense of divinity that exists around us, but we have to figure it out. We have to puzzle out what God intends, just like we have to puzzle out what the author intends in a poem, which is another flourish of Arnaut's ego. But that mystery of divine creation and figuring out the mind of God through complex figurings, never quite sure what any of it means. And it's so hard to read God's creation. Are we up to it? Is anybody? That's the mystery of the medieval era.